Look out your front window for a moment. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? The lawn is cut, the mail was delivered, and the power is humming in the wires that run to your home. We have spent our entire lives being told that if a crisis comes, it will be a bang, a sudden collapse that changes everything overnight. So we worry about doomsday. But I'm here to tell you that the true challenge isn't a collapse. It is a fade. The fade is quiet. It's not the lights going out forever. It's the power grid becoming unreliable just often enough to spoil the food in your freezer. It's not the hospital closing down. It's the ambulance taking 45 minutes to arrive instead of 10. It's walking up to the pharmacy counter for a prescription you've taken for 20 years only to hear the pharmacist say, "I'm sorry the supply truck didn't come today. Try again next Tuesday." Here is a reality that few people discuss. The modern just-in-time delivery system means the average grocery store or pharmacy in your town holds less than 72 hours of inventory. That system works perfectly when the world is perfect. But when the systems we rely on, municipal water, the power grid, the supply chain, start to age and slow down, that margin of error disappears. For those of us in our later years living in single-story homes in the quiet suburbs, we aren't looking to run into the woods with a backpack. We aren't looking to fight. We are looking to maintain our dignity, our health, and our independence in a world that is slowly getting slower, more expensive, and less reliable. You don't need to be a hero to survive the fade. You need to be a realist. Today, we are going to walk through the top 7 decisions you must make right now. These aren't about panic. They are about positioning yourself so that when the systems fade, you and your loved ones remain standing. Before we begin the list, I want to hear from you. For many of us, bugging out or running away isn't an option because of mobility issues. Maybe it's a bad knee, a wheelchair, or just the reality of age. In the comments below, tell me, if you had to leave your home but couldn't drive your car, what is your biggest concern regarding mobility? I read every comment, and your experience helps us build better solutions for everyone. Decision 1. The decision of debt. We often think of survival as stocking canned food or buying a generator. But in a slow fade scenario where inflation eats at your pension and the cost of simple repairs skyrockets, your biggest threat isn't a storm. It is your monthly burn rate. For those of us living on a fixed income in the suburbs, debt is not just a financial number, it is a vulnerability. In a functioning economy, debt is a tool. In a fading economy, debt is a tether that ties you to a sinking system. When the power grid falters or the pharmacy supply chain breaks, you need the flexibility to spend money on immediate solutions, like hiring a neighbor to fix a leak or buying medicine on the black market. If your check is already claimed by Visa or a mortgage, you have zero room to maneuver. Here is the hard truth. The system relies on you remaining a dutiful debtor. But history shows that during economic contractions, banks can and will freeze home equity lines of credit without warning, instantly cutting off the emergency fund many retirees think they have tied up in their house. You cannot eat your home's equity, and you cannot pay the electric bill with your credit score. The decision you must make today is to become anti-fragile. This might mean making the painful choice to sell the large family home that holds so many memories but carries a mortgage and downsizing to a smaller, paid-off property. It means eliminating the car payment so that if gas prices triple, the car sitting in your driveway doesn't cost you money just to exist. In a fade, the person with $10,000 in the bank and $0 in debt is infinitely wealthier and safer than the person with $1 million in assets and $5,000 in monthly obligations. Your ability to say no to dangerous situations or to wait out a crisis in safety is mathematically equal to how low your monthly fixed expenses are. Reduce the burn, and you buy yourself the luxury of time. Decision 2. The decision of health. We must have an uncomfortable conversation about the true source of your stability, because right now your life likely depends less on the power grid and more on the small amber bottle standing on your nightstand. We have been trained to trust that the pharmacy will always be full, but we rarely consider that the active chemical ingredients in nearly 90% of all generic prescriptions sold in America are manufactured in overseas factories thousands of miles away, meaning your daily blood pressure regulation is entirely dependent on a single shipping container floating somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. In a fading system where trade disputes or fuel shortages slow global shipping to a crawl, that fragile supply chain can snap in an instant, turning a manageable condition into a life-threatening crisis within weeks. The decision you must make today is to stop outsourcing your survival to a global logistics map you cannot control and start building metabolic capital, which is the only form of wealth that cannot be confiscated, taxed, or delayed at a port. This shift begins in your kitchen because the most effective survival tool is not a stockpile of bandages, but a radical elimination of the processed foods that keep your body in a state of chronic inflammation. By switching to simple whole foods, you are not just managing your weight, you are mathematically reducing your dependency on a medical system that is becoming too expensive and too crowded to help you. You are deciding to become the pilot of your own biology rather than a passive passenger in the sick care system. We must also change how we measure our own resilience. While we obsess over cholesterol numbers and heart rates, geriatricians have quietly identified a much simpler predictor of survival that you can test right on your sidewalk. It turns out that your casual walking speed is actually the single most accurate forecaster of how many years of independent living you have left, proving to be a more reliable, vital sign for longevity than your blood pressure or your body mass index. This means your daily walk around the block is not just leisure, it is a biological calibration that hardens your body against frailty. When you decide to prioritize your mobility and metabolic health today, you are ensuring that when the ambulance takes an hour to arrive during a blackout, you are strong enough to not need it at all. Decision 3. The decision of assets. For decades, we were trained to trust the markets, looking at our pension statements and feeling secure simply because the numbers looked big. However, there is an uncomfortable truth about a fading system where the stock market can go up while your actual standard of living crashes down. Economists describe this as financial repression, a period where the cost of meat, electricity, and medicine rises much faster than your savings can ever grow. In this environment, holding all your wealth in paper dollars is not safe because it is a guaranteed way to become poor slowly. The decision you must make today is to pivot from relying on the paper promises of strangers to securing physical solutions that you can control. I am not suggesting you cash out everything to buy gold bars that are too heavy to carry or too valuable to spend at the grocery store. For a senior living in a quiet suburb, your most valuable asset is not a stock certificate, but rather an inventory that solves immediate problems. True wealth looks like a 3-month supply of your daily blood pressure medication or a high-quality battery backup for your CPAP machine and lift chair. It is a gravity-fed water filter sitting on your counter, because when the pharmacy supply chain stutters or the water main breaks, you cannot trade a stock bond for a clean glass of water. We also need to reconsider the very definition of money. When credit card readers go down due to a power outage or a network hack, digital money effectively vanishes. I strongly suggest holding what is often called junk silver, which refers to United States dimes and quarters minted before 1964. It is fascinating to realize that a single pre-1964 silver quarter has maintained its purchasing power so perfectly that it can still buy you a gallon of gas today, just as it did during the Great Depression, completely bypassing nearly 90 years of inflation. Unlike a $100 bill that loses value every day, that silver coin is wealth that cannot be inflated away or frozen by a bank glitch. You must stop looking at your wealth merely as a number on a screen and start looking at it as capability. Ask yourself if you have warm wool blankets for when the furnace dies in February and the repairman is booked for weeks, or a manual can opener that never breaks. In a fade, the wealthy person isn't the one with the biggest bank account, but the one who doesn't need to leave the safety of their home to survive a bad week. Decision 4. The decision of income stream. We need to have an honest conversation about the mailbox because for many of us, the arrival of the monthly pension check used to feel like a relief. But now it feels like a race we are losing. In a system that is slowly fading, the prices at the grocery store creep up every single week, while the number on your check stays frozen in time. Think of your retirement savings like an ice cube sitting on the kitchen counter on a hot day, for no matter how big that ice cube started, the heat of inflation is melting it away right in front of your eyes. The decision you must make today is to stop watching the ice melt and start adding fresh water to the glass by creating small, manageable streams of new income. I know the idea of working again feels exhausting when your back aches and you have earned your rest, but I am not asking you to stand on your feet for 8 hours at a big box store or learn complicated computer code. I am asking you to look at the hobbies and skills you already have inside your home and see them as a lifeline. This could be as simple as propagating spider plants on your windowsill to sell to neighbors, or using your lifetime of experience to review documents or offer advice over the phone from your favorite armchair. You do not need a job, you just need a trickle of trade. Here is the secret that changes everything about how you see your survival. It is a stunning mathematical reality that earning just $50 a week, which is merely the price of repairing 2 neighbors' lamps or selling 3 jars of homemade jam acts as a magical shield that completely neutralizes the damage of 5% annual inflation on your entire household budget. Think about that power, because it means a tiny bit of effort on a Tuesday afternoon can literally cancel out the rising cost of living for the entire week, making you immune to the economic pain that is crushing everyone else. This decision is also about fighting the invisible fate of the mind. When you wake up with a small purpose, like finishing a knitting project for a client or fixing a toaster for a friend, your brain lights up and fights off the fog of aging. By becoming a producer again, even in a tiny way, you remind the community that you are valuable, and you remind yourself that you are not a victim of the system, but the captain of your own ship. Decision 5. The decision of location. We must face the most emotionally difficult decision on this list, because it often involves leaving behind a home filled with 30 years of memories. However, we cannot ignore the hard data, which shows that nearly 11 million older American households are now classified as cost-burdened, spending more than 30% of their fixed income solely on housing expenses and property taxes, turning that beloved suburban home into a financial velvet cage. In a world of cheap gas, living the national average of 7 miles from the nearest grocery store is a minor inconvenience, but in a fading system where fuel prices spike and supply chains falter, that 7-mile gap becomes a life-threatening barrier for anyone no longer driving. The decision you must make today is to trade the prestige of your zip code for the practicality of your survival by engaging in location arbitrage, moving to a community where your fixed dollar stretches 40% further due to lower tax burdens and utility costs. This does not mean you should retreat to a cabin in the deep woods, which is statistically dangerous for anyone over age 70 due to emergency response times. Instead, you are looking for a buffer zone town that functions independently of the major metro hubs. You need a location where the population density is low enough to be sustainable, yet high enough to support a hospital within a 15-minute drive. You are swapping a high-maintenance asset in a fragile city for a low-maintenance sanctuary in a resilient town, instantly freeing up capital to fund your life. There is a terrifying fragility to our modern geography that most people ignore until the shelves go empty. It is a startling logistical fact that the average piece of produce on a suburban dinner plate has traveled exactly 1,500 miles to get there, meaning your daily survival is entirely dependent on a trucking network that holds only 3 days of global diesel fuel reserves. By simply moving to a region surrounded by local farms and producers, you cut that lifeline distance from thousands of miles to just 10 miles, effectively buying yourself months of food security that a person trapped in the concrete jungle can never purchase. Ultimately, this is a calculation of safety. In dense, sprawling suburbs, the average police response time has climbed to over 11 minutes nationally and can stretch to hours during regional blackouts. In a tight-knit town, help is often a neighbor walking over in under 3 minutes. You must place yourself where the ratio of resources to people is in your favor, rather than competing with thousands of others for the last loaf of bread. Decision 6. The decision of purpose. There is a trap waiting for us in the comfortable silence of our suburban homes, one that is far more dangerous than a power outage. We have been sold a story that retirement is the ultimate reward, a time to sit back, watch television, and let the world serve us. But in a system that is slowly fading, this passivity is not a luxury. It is a fast track to cognitive decay. When the supply chains slow down and the neighborhood gets quieter, the worst thing you can be is just another mouth to feed, because the moment you convince yourself that you are finished contributing, you inadvertently convince your body that it is finished living. The decision you must make today is to reject the role of the passive consumer and reclaim your identity as a producer, finding a small but critical way to add value to the lives around you, whether it is mending clothes for neighbors, organizing a community pantry, or teaching a skill to the younger generation. We often think of purpose as a philosophical concept, but it is actually a hard biological switch. It is a chilling medical reality that the statistical risk of suffering a heart attack or stroke spikes by nearly 40% during the first year of retirement, not because the body suddenly fails due to age, but because the brain interprets the sudden loss of daily utility as a chemical signal that the tribe no longer needs you to survive, effectively initiating a biological shutdown sequence. This proves that feeling useful is not just an emotion, it is a physiological requirement for staying alive. In a slow collapse scenario, where the lights might be out for days and anxiety runs high, the person with a task is the only one who remains calm. While others pace the floor worrying about what the government will do, The person with a purpose, perhaps the one responsible for checking on the other widows on the block or managing the neighborhood garden, is too busy being essential to be afraid. You must find a job that does not pay money but pays in dignity, because in a world that is falling apart, the most secure place to stand is on the ground where you are needed. Decision 7. The decision of social capital. We finally arrive at the most critical layer of your survival pyramid, because when the lights go out and the phone lines are dead, your bank account balance becomes instantly irrelevant. For years, the suburbs have sold us the dangerous luxury of privacy, allowing us to live just 20 feet from our neighbors without ever knowing their names. But in a fading system where emergency services are overwhelmed and the police response time stretches into hours, this isolation transforms your home from a castle into a tomb. The decision you must make today is to break the habit of privacy and begin investing in social capital, which is simply the accumulated value of the favors, trust, and relationships you have built with the people living within walking distance of your front door. You do not need to become best friends with everyone, but you must establish a soft network of mutual aid. This starts with a simple, humble admission of vulnerability right now while things are calm, by knocking on a neighbor's door today to gift them a jar of surplus jam or to ask for help moving a heavy box. You are effectively opening a line of communication that could save your life in February. You are creating a tribe of necessity, ensuring that when you fall, someone knows you are there. We often dismiss chatting as a waste of time, but history proves it is actually a biological defense mechanism. Sociologists analyzing the deadliest heatwave in modern American history discovered a stunning truth. The single strongest predictor of which elderly residents survived the disaster was not who had the most money or the best air conditioning, but literally how many times a week they stopped to talk to a neighbor, proving that casual social connection is a statistically more effective life-saving technology than electricity. In a slow collapse, the currency of the realm shifts from dollars to trust. When you need a ride to the clinic because your car won't start, or you need someone to check on you during a blackout, you cannot pay a stranger enough to care. You can only draw on the social capital you banked years ago. The wealthy survivor is not the one with the most gold buried in the yard, but the one who can stand on their porch and wave to 3 people who would come running if they screamed. We have walked through 7 heavy doors today, traveling from the cold mathematics of your bank account to the soil in your garden, and finally to the handshake of the neighbor across the street. I know it is easy to feel overwhelmed to look at this list and think that perhaps you are too old to start reshaping your life. But I want to leave you with one final truth that might silence that doubt. Psychologists have found that the anxiety you feel about the future is often just unassigned energy waiting for a task, meaning the moment you take action on just one of these decisions, the fear physically evaporates and is replaced by confidence. You are not a helpless passenger on a sinking ship, you are the captain of a vessel that is simply navigating through rougher waters. The systems around us may fade, the lights may flicker, and the supply lines may slow, but your dignity and your resolve do not have to fade with them. Now, I need to borrow your wisdom for our community. We know that for many of us, running for the hills is physically impossible. I want you to go down to the comments and answer this specific question. If you have limited mobility or rely on medical devices, what is the single most important preparation you have made to ensure you can shelter in place safely? Have you installed a manual hand pump for water, or perhaps moved your bedroom to the ground floor to avoid stairs during a blackout? Your practical advice could be the blueprint that saves someone else's life. Please share your story. Read what others have written, and remember that the only wrong decision is the decision to do nothing. I will see you in the next video.